Hi, this is Kelsey Hughes, and this is my final project for the Warming Planet class. This is a presentation that discusses how climate change has affected the Salt Lake City area, the Great Salt Lake, as well as the entire state of Utah. It also includes what climate change has done to alter the state of Utah so far, the plans that are put in place to try and slow down those changes, as well as what the future might look like if things don't change for Utah. Firstly, what is climate change and what causes it? Climate change is a long-term shift in weather patterns. The difference between weather and climate change is that weather is a change in the atmosphere over a short period of time, whereas climate change looks at long-term periods of time and larger shifts in weather, in the full weather patterns. What causes climate change? Climate change can be caused by both natural and man-made activity. Some of the natural causes for climate change include change in Earth's reflectivity, also known as albedo, volcanic activity, changes in solar activity, and naturally occurring carbon dioxide changes. Some of the human-made causes include greenhouse gases such as methane, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide. Also, change in Earth's reflectivity due to man-made structures. For example, roads, buildings, any type of structure that changes the reflectivity of the Earth's surface. One of the main problems that Utah is facing currently is a massive, massive drought. First of all, what is a drought? According to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, drought is a deficiency of precipitation over an extended period of time, usually a season or more, resulting in water shortage. Utah has been suffering from an extreme drought for more than a full year. And this map to the right of the screen is from the Utah Drought Tracker. And it shows all of the different areas of Utah and what range of drought they are in. As you can see, no part of Utah is in anything less than severe drought. What causes drought? There are lots of different things that can cause drought. However, they are all called climate change forcing. A climate forcing is the physical process of affecting the climate on Earth through a number of forcing factors. That definition comes from Energy Education's website. Some of the specific forcings that cause drought, mainly the rise in temperature. The rise in temperature causes basically a domino effect to start. So there is faster evaporation of the moisture that does fall, lower precipitation levels, so less rain, less snow, and decreased snowpack, which Utah depends on for its irrigation water. Because of the decreased snowpack, all of the rivers, streams, and lakes are also lower in capacity. So the effect on the greater Salt Lake area in the past, the rising temperatures in the last few years have resulted in less snowpack. Less snowpack means less water availability for the cities and towns that depend on that snow melt for their water supply. It also has caused a disruption of the ecosystem above the tree line. So all of that tundra above the tree line, the animals that live there are being affected. Tourist season has also been disrupted because of lack of winter sports availability. Utah depends a lot on the mountains here and the winter sports for a lot of their money made through tourism. And because of the lack of snow, the ski seasons have been shorter and shorter. Increased greenhouse gases have also made the air pollution in Salt Lake Valley worse. There is a higher concentration of ozone in the valley, and with that higher concentration, more smog and harmful air levels have become more and more frequent. This has increased illness and exacerbated medical conditions to the citizens that live here in Salt Lake. Higher ozone levels also mean more retained heat in the valley. So what that does is restarts that domino effect of higher temperature, less precipitation, higher evaporation rates, which in turn creates more air pollution, less snowpack, and it just goes in a vicious cycle. Here are a couple of figures that you can see the snowpack level from 1981 all the way up to 2019. This is the data showing the amount of snowpack per year, and it has steadily decreased from about 50 inches to about 35 inches or so in 2019. You can also see on the right-hand side a chart showing the increase in days where an unhealthy air warning would have shown up for Salt Lake citizens. That data shows an increase in days from about 10 days per year in the year 2000 to about 20 days per year in the year 2016, where that unhealthy air warning would be put out. This is just another form of data showing the temperature increase from about 1931 all the way up to this year, 2022, from an area in Logan, Utah. It shows that there is a steady rise in the temperature in Utah from about 1950 all the way up until this year. So how will this affect us? How does the rising temperatures and the drought affect the people of Salt Lake City and the greater areas in Utah? One of the main issues with this drought is that the Great Salt Lake is shrinking, and a lot of businesses depend on the Great Salt Lake as well as the rivers that run into it. Brine Shrimp is a very large business here in Salt Lake City, and with the Great Salt Lake shrinking, the salt concentration is higher, making it harder and harder for those shrimp to reproduce, which means less eggs for these brine shrimp fishermen to harvest. Not only that, but the cost of lowering the docks and launch points in the shrinking Salt Lake has driven up the cost of these brine shrimp eggs, which makes these Utah companies less competitive in the market. Mineral extraction from the Great Salt Lake is also struggling because of the shrinking water and the change in the concentration of the salt levels. There is less area for mineral extraction from the lake. Recreation purposes. There are businesses that depend on the tourism and the recreation that goes along with having this big, beautiful lake. And with less water, there is less room for recreational activities. And lastly, agriculture. Agriculture throughout all of Utah has been highly affected by this drought, with dropping water levels in the rivers, less snowpack to replenish the irrigation ponds, There's less water for crops, less water for livestock, which also increases in less feed for the livestock. So crops are struggling, and farmers are really having to watch how much water they are using. How does it affect residential areas? There are a lot of harsh restrictions in watering. For residential areas, lawns and gardens are on a 2-day restriction right now for watering. There can only be 2 days per week where water can be running at 20 minutes a zone. There are harsh restrictions on recreational use of sprinklers, kids playing in the sprinklers, or water running for a purpose that is not watering plants. Can result in a fine for the homeowner. Irrigation water that most citizens use to water their grass and their gardens in the residential areas has been prioritized for commercial use for those farmers who are trying to continue to produce their crop and their livestock. Environmental effects. Less water in the lakes and streams means less habitat for fish and other aquatic animals. That in turn affects the animals that feed on those aquatic animals in the rivers and streams. Lack of water affects the plants and the trees. Those are also a food source for animals as well as habitat. And the poor air quality has gotten worse due to the lack of water and the amount of dust that has been blown up off of the lake into the valley. There are action plans in place, not only for drought management, but also for clean electricity in Salt Lake City and surrounding areas. The government's goal is to have 100% renewable energy for community electricity supply by 2030, as well as 80% reduction in community greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. The drought management plan has 3 phases. The first phase, water supply and availability committees are activated and get information to the public. The second phase, drought review and reporting committees, as well as a task force are created to coordinate drought response actions. And phase 3 would be a drought emergency declared by the governor, and necessary steps would be taken to access state and federal drought assistance programs. If the drought continues, the future of Salt Lake City and the surrounding areas will be a struggle. Smaller towns will struggle with having enough drinking and irrigation water for their residents. Cities will have to put a halt on all new residential constructions due to lack of water to provide to their new residents. As the Great Salt Lake continues to dry up, toxic dust will be added to the already polluted air. Health problems will increase, and a potential for a Dust Bowl effect will also increase. As of today, the Great Salt Lake is at 1/3 the capacity that it originally was. Businesses will suffer, and a tourism decrease will continue because of the lack of snowfall and lack of precipitation. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Here are some of the references.